Five, four, three, two, one.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. I'm your host, as always, Mike Murray. All of my peers, all of my friends, all of my coaching buddies in the business have said to me now for weeks, you need to get Vern Gambetta on the Coaches Corner. I am thrilled today to introduce everybody to the leader of gain swimming, a practitioner in the business for many, many years with a lot of experience across a myriad of different sports. Welcome to the program, Vern. We are so thrilled to have you on.
Well, thanks, Mike. I'm excited to be on. I know some of the, I've got some of those coaches really fooled, I think, but no, I am just so blessed to work with the coaches that I work with in swimming and obviously other sports throughout my career. But now I'm, no pun intended, pretty immersed in swimming. The COVID pandemic has been a blessing in disguise because I basically am with the Sharks all the time. I'm not traveling, and it's been really cool. It's been really cool to, to be there and see the progress over the last 8 months instead of, coming in and out like I have in the past. So cool.
Yeah, you're probably able to measure things a little bit more quickly than you normally do, being there on a more regular basis.
Yeah, measure in the sense of, I kind of call it iology, right? And that we can, when I'm not here, I'm doing giving the coaches the dry land workout. They implement it. I don't see the effect of it, right? Literally, you see the changes, bodily changes in 14 to 18, 19-year-olds. And then I don't see what happens in the water. So now we might do a dry land like yesterday, and I don't stay for the whole workout, but I'll stay for at least an hour of the workout or get there early, in the morning and see, so it's because the goal of all of this, right, is to create from just a pure performance perspective, fast swimmers, not better dry landers, so. I think that's, I think that with the ultimate test being the water, and right now we're in a taper phase. It's a little bit, going into San Antonio with 7 or 8 of the kids, and so really being there day to day and adjusting the dry land in the taper is really good, because most of the time I'm doing that from afar. And in this case, it's Brent and I, with Brent really taking the lead. He'll say to me, Vern, I think we should do, yep, you're right on. He said to me the other day, well, I said, he said, what do you have in mind for dry land tomorrow? And I said, put into the water, they'll tell you, you'll tell me tomorrow morning, because if they're not perky and they're not, we're more work isn't going to do any good. So anyway, long answer, sorry.
No, that's perfect. And that's really what we're seminally interested in today, is learning more about that process and, how you apply your philosophy to swimming, because you have such a strong background in many other sports. When I talk to Brent, or when I talk to Chris Plum, or when I talk to Ian Murray, your philosophy on dry land and movement is a big part of what their 10,000 foot level philosophy is for their club teams. And one of the things that I asked you before we had this episode was, can you talk to us a little bit about what physical literacy is, and some good initial strategies for coaches to consider when developing their dry land programs?
Great question. And had an hour-long conversation with Chris Webb about this yesterday, so it's really fresh in my mind in terms of looking at it. I tend to look at development in this case in swimming as almost like a what would you call it, diamond shape, and it's kind of driven almost top down. We know what the end result, what we want our national class they're basically junior swimmers and some of them senior to B. And so in a sense, you reverse engineer it and say, okay, we know what the swimming skills are. And then we need to really look at what are the athletic components that you need to be a good swimmer. And then that comes back to and I think you can split hairs whether you call it fundamental movement skills or physical literacy. I think there is, from an academic perspective, there's a bit of a difference, but we're not interested in the academics of this or the theory of it. We're interested in the practice. So I'll use the two terms interchangeably, and it's. I think the fundamental thing we want to give kids from the time they come on pool deck and reinforce, it's there, but we have to bring it out in them, is body awareness and awareness of center. You know, and thirdly, we're bipedal. We were designed to walk upright. And this goes to Bill Boomer and Milton Elms's concept. We swim like we walk, you know, and your arms and legs are in opposition in freestyle and in backstroke. And so we want to build on what the youngster has coming to us. And a lot of people are now saying, well, more free play, more free play. Well, free play is free and it's unsupervised by adults or swim coaches. That's different. When they come to the pool, we want some structured play, a playful element with 8, 9, and 10-year-olds that give them fundamental body awareness. We want to do some real basic strengthening that enhances connections of ankle, knee, hip, shoulder, wrist, elbow. And a lot of that is done through crawling, you know, and real basic activities like that. Climbing would be a big part of it. And some of the skills, if you can visualize this is an audio podcast, but if you can visualize that, let's use September through the next October, or let's say June with an 8, 9-year-old. What we want to do is we want to progress them in their first year with the club across horizontally. And then each club has a curriculum and an exit, what do you call it? It's not strategy, an exit evaluation of what you want that youngster to have in terms of movement skills. So that if they're moved up to the next age group, then they graduate to a hierarchy of more coordinative skills, and also the way it works is each subsequent year as you go up the ladder, the amount of time you devote to this increases. So it might, if you come 3 days a week, you know, your first 3 months, it's 15 minutes each time. And it's usually divided into 3 5-minute blocks. And the first 2 5-minute blocks are really foundational. And then the last 5-minute block is usually some sort of a game built on the foundation movements. It could be crawling relays, wheelbarrow races. I mean, somebody said to me, actually, John, when the assistant coach with the Sharks was there 2 weeks ago at 5:30 in the morning, and we have a real structured warm up to swim program. But the kids that are in our national team group, there's a lot of kids here that have been in this program for, well, jeepers, 2012. So figure they're 17 years old now. Well, some of them weren't in the program then, but, and so what I did is I just took elements of each of the warm up to swim and some of the things that we would do with 7, 8-year-olds. And we did it in about 12-minute period. And John said to me afterwards, he says, that was really old school. And I said, no, it was 7th grade PE at La Cumbre Junior High in 1970, you know, and it was, they enjoy it. I mean, it was, you know, it got everything. And my goal is, look, when they get done with that dry land session and Brent is there, and that's the other key element for all you swim coaches that are listening. These coaches, you look at those teams, those coaches are heavily invested in this. They're not saying go to the weight room and send him to somebody else, because they know what's, you know, so, you know, you go to Carmel and Chris is in the weight room, you go to you know, to Dynamo, Ian's there, you go to wherever, you know, and I want them connected, and I want them ready to swim, and there's some ass kicking workouts these kids are going to do, but that's matched up to what they're going to do in the pool, so it's all based on these fundamental movements, run, jump, throw, reach, pull, push, squat, lunge, step, catch, throw, all of these kinds of things. So and it's really an elementary PE curriculum in a lot of ways. It borrowed heavily on that and movement exploration, and actually a lot of things that just through happenstance over the 30, 40 years ago, being exposed to some and working with rehabilitation concepts in terms of rehabilitation, spending 9 years in professional baseball and basically eliminating shoulder injuries prepared me for one of the reasons why we don't have shoulder injuries, is because we never focused on the shoulder. We focused on the hip and the connection of the shoulder to the hip and down the chain, which is exactly the same thing that happens in swimming, except it happens, horizontally. So.
What a remarkable thing for a lot of coaches to consider, that many of these movements or movement-based activities inside of the programs that you're working with are based off of elementary physical education class,
which kids don't have anymore.
It's really,
That's
yeah. I mean, it's something that we talk about as a staff on our team. When we think about some of the library of movement of our athletes and how it's changed so much, if we do a dryland session where we play ultimate frisbee, or we do some other components that would be classified probably as elementary PE modalities, we see some real lack of movement acumen in our athletes. So
you see, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, that's perfect place for you to jump in.
No, you see some real ugly, scary things, and they don't get better when they get in the water. They're just manifested differently. And I mean, we do it more and more. We do a thing called shapes, and it does start with the young ones. And I would honestly say that up until this year, the shapes were a lot more of an emphasis with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. Now we're doing them with the senior group, and we have 3 gymnastics mats. We put them out there and we're doing, I mean, you can't believe the crazy stuff that these kids are willing to do. They love it, So if I can't going into the wall, if I can't get small on dry land, how am I going to get small going into the wall? And then I have to do a flip turn. Well, everybody goes, well, their turns aren't very good. Well, what did you do? What was the fundamental skill on dry land that set them up? That's disorienting. Now you add the water, you don't have the same kind of visual orientation, so you better master it and have proficiency on dry land, right? And so, it's things like that. And again, look, this is my 53rd year of coaching. My first year, I didn't teach PE. I taught history and geography, and then the next few years taught both and coached. Every kid had mandatory physical education for 45 minutes a day in California. Well, in 1969, all 50 states had it. Okay, now one state has mandatory physical education, and I don't even know what the status of it is. I think it's Illinois, and it's been watered down. Well, you could certainly, and you talk to the, Nort Thornton's a mentor of mine, and I know Nort quite well, and he graduated from San Jose State quite a few years ahead of me. I went to Fresno State, but it was the same kind of program, and you were a teacher. So you learn how to teach, you learn fundamental pedagogy. And if you were a PE major or minor, the emphasis was on these kind of skills. And you could count on the fact that when a kid came out for swimming practice or track practice or whatever it was, that they'd had an hour a day of these kinds of things. Now we have to find ways to give this to our youngsters in the context of a swim practice. And we're gifted here in Sarasota. We're outside. We have a dedicated now big dryland area, and some of the clubs have nothing but pool deck, and so it presents a myriad of problems, but what also presents a lot of different opportunities. I look at what Chris Webb has at Fort Collins, and it's there's hardly any space. And so everything's been adapted to move within your space, which we define your space as double arms distance apart. How much can you do, and still be safe on pool deck? So part of what key cornerstone of my philosophy is, don't tell me what you can't do. I want to know what you can do. Always look at possibilities. I'm not a Pollyanna, I'm realistic, but I look around. I did a thing, I consulted down in Trinidad with their Ministry of Sport, and it happened to be not swim coaches, but it was court sports. And we were in their national stadium. And I went outside and I said, okay, you have 15 minutes. Everybody has to by yourself. You can't partner up. You have to come back with 5 different things you can do within this stadium. That's all. And that's with your head coach, with your assistant coaches, that would be an assignment I'd have. I want you to look at our facility now, and I want you to look at it with whole different eyes, and see what we can do. Parking lot could be fair game as long as there's not traffic, but you look at your whole facility, so is it perfect? No. I mean, I'd love to have some of the things that Carmel has in their weight room. I love the fact that we can be outside year round. Again, if we're in Indiana, we couldn't be, so, but I love outdoor strength training areas. I think there's advantages to that. So.
For sure. And one of the things that you touched on there, Vern, was the importance of connectivity. And one of my very good friends is TJ Day. He's out here in Buffalo with Star Swim.
Yeah.
And TJ is very adamant about WUTS. And I've been able to watch WUTS. And WUTS, for those of you that don't know, is a little warm-up program called Warm Up to Swim, WTS, he calls it. And I watch these kids do it. And he's re-energizing that club. Talk to us about Warm Up to Swim and what it does for the athletes.
It's essential. And if you want the magic pill to eliminate shoulder problems and low back and knee problems, with the growing athlete, is Warm Up to Swim. So, and that's what you start teaching at the entry level of the club. The fundamental movements are portions of Warm Up to Swim. And then when you get to your senior group or your national group, and actually one group below, I mean, I'm using those terms because teams have different structures, so I'm trying to make it across those. So then you have what we define is we have 3 different warm up to swims, an A, B, and C, and one of them is a little more movement oriented. One of them is a little bit more mobility oriented, and then one is a little bit more core oriented. Okay, so, and what you do is day 1 or day first session, you do warm up A, then the next day you do warm up B, and then C, and then A and B and C. And it probably takes, depending on how you want to structure it and the number of kids you have, it can go as short as 12 minutes and as long as 20 with the same number of exercises. You just you change the reps, and it's think toenails to fingernails. I know that sounds like a cliche, but we're really working on getting everything connected. And one of the foundations that I learned as an athlete and as a track coach is that training accumulates day to day, week to week, month to month, and year to year. And there's a really profound training effect from repeating this warm-up routine day in and day out. The biggest thing you have to guard against as a coach is it becomes mundane, it becomes routine. So you have to coach it. You have to be on them. Come on, it starts with mini band, walking rotations, bump, lunge and reach, squat series, push-up series. There's things like that in it. And you can't turn your back and say, you and the assistant coach be talking about the swim set. You've got to coach it, you know. So, and it sets the tempo for the day. So the idea behind it, and this comes from track and field. And when I went into baseball, it was the same kind of thing. The pitchers would pick up a baseball and start throwing, and they'd start at 30 feet, and in about 2 minutes they'd be just, you know, and then they'd grab their shoulder, and I go, this is stupid. What'd you do to warm up to throw? Well, what'd you do to warm up to swim? And so when you get in the pool, I don't want you to do 1,000-meter warm up in the pool of crappy strokes. I want when you hold water for the first time, I want you to be able, you could go to your main set if you do this right. And I really think, I don't, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx us. I really think that this has been one of the keys to shoulder injury prevention. And, you know, so you give up a little water time, but you gain quality water time because they're prepared for the water, you know. So I hope that encapsulates it, but it's hugely important, hugely important. And that's the cornerstone of the whole Gain Swimming program is the structured warm up to swim. And then remember too, that warm up to swim then is your warm up to compete. And what we try to do is teach the kids, okay, now you're going to take A, B, C. You're going to take what out of A makes you feel good, what out of B makes you feel good, what out of C, and that's your meet warm up, you know, too. Now the younger kids usually do a group warm up, you know, but outside. But you know, the older kids, I don't think it's necessary. So.
You mentioned something in there, Vern, about some spatial awareness. And as coaches, when we're trying to learn more about our sport, learn more about how to apply techniques, we learn about some basics of kinesiology. We learn about kinesthetic awareness, proprioception. Right. How does a program like Warm Up to Swim apply directly to technique?
Well, because first of all, the thesis is I mean, if I stand on pool deck with virtually any swim coach that I know, I'm going to hear something about connection of hip to shoulders. I'm going to hear ankle, knee, hip. And so the thesis is, based on Boomer and Nelms, is that you walk like you swim like you walk. And so there's walking rotations. You know, you can see me here, but as I can describe this, if I step forward with my right leg, my left shoulder goes forward just a little bit, and my hips and shoulders work in slight little bit of opposition. Well, watch, you know, look underwater, go take a snorkel and watch or using a video and watch them swim towards you, you know. So it's you're just trying to reinforce the patterns and then the awareness of the relationship of the parts. And again, we're not aquatic animals, so we're reinforcing it in our familiar environment to get ready for the less familiar and for some kids not as comfortable environment, you know. That's one thing too. I when talking to Nord after he retired and he was just coaching breaststroke at Cal, we'd have these conversations on the phone now because I wasn't there anymore. I mean, that was years before I'd been there, but about just that how important it was getting these kids to understand some of those movements on dry land to make the adaptations that he wanted to make in the breaststroke, you know, too.
Sure. And what a stroke to really apply a lot of this too, because, you know, there's some old adages and misconceptions that, you know, you can only be born a breaststroker, or, you know, breaststrokers are relatively rare. There's a lot of simultaneous movement that happens in that stroke. So what are some
fascinated? I don't even call myself a recreational swimmer. I have to use fins and a snorkel and buoyancy vests. No, not now. I got enough of a gut that takes care of that now. But I'm fascinated by the breaststroke. you know, because of those complexities and the things that I hear and what you know, what you can see. And Jim Steen, got the pleasure of working with him a couple of years at Kenyon. And the last year I worked with him, I got to go back 4 times. And he said, we got to get our breaststrokers better. And so I was trying all these crazy things to try to imitate breaststroke on dry land after the first visit. And I came back and I said, Jim, this is a waste of time. You can't imitate that on dry land. We just got to get them better at certain ranges of motion, and we got to get them stronger through certain ranges instead of trying to imitate. And that sounds like double talk, you know, but we didn't figure it out. They got better.
Absolutely. And, you know, oftentimes we find that our strongest swimmers are often our most powerful breaststrokers. Breaststrokers tend to be those athletes on our team that have some dynamic power. Vern, talk to us a little bit about some of the fears that a lot of coaches have about stepping into the weight room. You know, I feel like over the last 25 years of my involvement in the sport, both as an athlete and as a coach, there's strong advocacy for weightlifting, 18 and under. Then there's no one 18 and under should be lifting. And then there's a middle range. So you may maybe talk to us a little bit about that evolution and some of the things that you've noticed and why you advocate some of it now.
Yeah, a really good question. And it's, first of all, I try to stay away, I do, from the term weight training. I use the umbrella term strength training. We lift some incredible tonnages in terms of weights, in terms of dumbbells and that kind of stuff. And you would, if you, unless you followed the numbers, you wouldn't watch a workout and you wouldn't see. I think, and for the listeners, please, this is not to sound arrogant, but you can tell the kids, the athletes that have been on the GAIN program, I mean, they look different. And, you know, because we're trying to develop a body shape that's relative to swimming. We want, you know, we want long and strong. We're not trying to increase your max bench press. In fact, the only time there is bench press in the program is that's usually for male collegiate swimmers, because they're more interested in how they look sometimes than how they, and we did a little bit of it with the senior swimmers in Singapore. But so I use the term strength training, and strength training, I define it as coordination training with appropriate resistance, to be able to handle your body weight. And so everything, the principle is body weight before external resistance. The majority of the movements, we use dumbbells, sandbags, and then for some of the heavier movements off the ground, trap bars, which what I call the juniors, kind of your 13, 14-year-olds, and then your senior groups progress to using those. And it's all based on any of the lifts with weight, unless they're small, is based on percentage of body weight. And the rule of thumb is that you never sacrifice range of motion for resistance. So, for example, it's usually the teenage boys, they usually want to lift more than they're supposed to for the prescribed number of reps, and you're spending more time. So, okay, look, you know, sometimes now with the iPhone, I can just take a picture and say, you know, you're going through 3/4 of the range of motion you need to. That's not going to have transfer to the pool. With the girls, it's initially that's why I try to stay away from weight training and stay away from strength training. Now, you know, at Dynamo and at Mason and I mean, yeah, Dynamo has a weight room too. We don't have a weight room here in Sarasota. It's outdoors. We have everything: dumbbells, kettlebells. We've got overhead bars, you know, climbing ropes, all 9 yards, and use all of them. You know, the colleges that I've consulted with at Singapore, we have pretty fancy weight rooms, but still, the majority of the work was done with dumbbells, kettlebells, stretch cords in certain movements to work on more eccentric and stabilization type of strength. And what else? Sandbags. Use sandbags a fair bit, for resistance, and some weight vest, so that and I started on this thing with the girls is get them over the fear of resistance. And I mean, Brent was joking. We had a group of boys here 5 years ago now. I mean, they were really good. I mean, I think Austin Katz is the only one left in college now. All of them graduated. No, Brent Riley and is a junior. Anyway, these kids were just boys, were flat out studs. We have, and Brent sent a text to him a couple of weeks ago. I saw the text. He and Matt Garcia is who I know really well. I've coached with his father in baseball and that. And he sent to Matt. He said, Matt, all the girls are lifting more stuff, more weight on high pulls and on rows than you guys did, and they take pride in it now, and you can see the difference. I mean, it's the eye test. I mean, they're lean, they're, and the same thing, and the guys, I mean, it's profound what you see. And look, and some of this is what we have to remember is we're just taking advantage of the biology. These kids, that's the beauty with the boys. They're secreting more testosterone in a week than Lance Armstrong took in a month. And the girls, you got to start them earlier. You got to start like 12, 13, 14. And so that they you keep that leanness, in that. So, but in some respects, the strength training is almost more important for the girls than it is for the boys, just in terms of body composition, enabling them to, and the whole purpose of dryland, whether it's strength training, and there's a ton, no pun intended, of core work, a lot, thousands of reps of medicine ball, different medicine ball movements, and that. So usually in art right now, because we have, let's see, what day would it be? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays here with the Sharks are just in the afternoon is just core work, but every day, either at the beginning as part of warm up or at the end of the strength training workout, we'll usually bracket that with core modules. So literally, you're looking at thousands of reps of core work, and everything is set up in modules, which is 3 to 5 exercises. So you don't have to rewrite everything all the time. And the kids now know the modules, say like core module, and we can say 3 core modules, your choice, and they know what they are. They're posted and they know what they are. And they learn those, they start learning those. The 9 and 10-year-olds don't do modules. They learn the individual exercises, and then 11, 12, 13-year-olds start to do modules. So it's a system that's, gradually feeding up the ladder, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really interesting to see how that all plays out in the development. And, one thing that I want to mention is when we talk about Carmel, Sarasota, Mason, Dynamo, these are the club teams that are producing our junior national teams. And we love correlation on Coach's Corner. And one thing that they all have in common is, they're working with these programs that you've created. So it's really great to see that kind of come together. And I remember this was about 2010. I think I was at Junior Nationals, and we were sitting next to Chris Plum in Carmel. And I remember saying to my assistant, these kids are jacked. Like every one of these kids are jacked.
Yeah,
and they were doing, I think it was probably back then, like an early version of warm up to swim.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris had a notebook piece of paper that he taped up to the wall, and they were doing it, religiously at prelims, finals. I mean, it was really cool.
They do it. Those kids, like the they're not twins, Foster brothers, when they traveled overseas with junior national team or whatever, they brought their mini band, all the kids, I mean, they all, it's part of their, it just becomes part of your repertoire, and um, yeah, it's been really cool to watch. It's a terrific tribute to those coaches. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, it's there's a monkey see, monkey do attitude. Everybody wants to look at what the good people are and they want to copy it. And people say, can we come and watch work? Sure, you can come and watch workout. You can copy it, you can film it, but you don't understand what goes into this. And I'm not trying to make it complicated, but the investment that those coaches have to make this program work, people don't understand that, and how to really integrate it with swimming. That's the key thing. It's not separate. It's not how many hours of dry land we do. It's what have you achieved proficiency at the movement, so that when you the whole goal here is when you get in the pool, I can't make you a better swimmer on dry land. You guys make them better swimmers in the water. But if we do a good job on dry land and we're all working together, when they get in the water, they're going to get, and you do 1,000 yards, they're going to get more out of the 1,000 yards that they do than somebody else that doesn't do the program. I'm convinced of that. I'll go to my grave saying that, because I saw the same thing in track and field. I've seen it in professional baseball, and I've seen it in professional soccer, and rugby, and on and on and on, so. But it's not easy. You don't become a gold medal team by showing up at the pool, or saying go do weights, So anyway.
No doubt about it. One question that we have, Vern, that I think speaks to a lot of this is how important it is to track data and the analytics of this throughout the process.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think I'm open to a lot of criticism on that, because we know. I don't do a good job of it. Hell, let's just cut to the chase. I think the individual coaches do. I think like I can, it's downstairs, I can pull out last week's third week of the cycle in the phase. I can tell you what the total reps were. But in terms of actually keeping track of the amount of weight lifted, I know from the modules exactly how many reps are done and what the weight would be in med balls. But when it comes to the actual lifting, we're supposed to be, and that's where I'm bad, we're supposed to be using, I won't say which program, there's a computerized program, but I don't like the idea of having the kids have cell phones and having to record the weights. A big part of the success of this program, and an integral ingredient of it, is the work to rest ratios. And that's why we get so much more done in a concentrated period of time, because we're not trying to achieve max strength. So a lot of times it's 1-to-1. You don't even have time to start your phone and do that. So we're depending on them to keep track of the loads somewhat. I can tell you within with dumbbell complex what so-and-so girl is doing. Well, I know what she'll do tomorrow, in taper with the dumbbell complex we're doing, So, but my answer is, it's not as, I like to be scientific. I don't like to be science-y, but I say that's where I'm more into coaching the quality of the movement, the rhythm and the tempo, than getting hung up on some of that stuff.
Great. I appreciate that, Vern. And like me, some of the type A coaches out there, we like to know every single repeat, every single time, but it's good to understand that too. I think it's important to step away from that and just let them do their thing. So here's a real world application.
Just a sec though. I want to reiterate again, it's the quality of the movement with appropriate resistance that's going to yield the results. So, and I don't want to give people, everything is thoroughly planned in advance. Okay. Now, when you get to what we call our taper and hybrid phase, where the workouts go more day to day. So we'll adjust day to day. Now, I'm not, because I'm on this, I'm not at, and for there's a reason I'm not at today's workout either. But tomorrow morning, they're swimming first because there's a meet. So we'll adjust the dry land because that's their last dry land workout before they go to San Antonio, so, but that adjustment is going to be based on what they did in the pool.
Sure. So
Sorry.
no, that's great. I really appreciate you taking the time to elaborate, and I think our coaches who are watching will too. A real world example, Vern. Let's say here I am, I'm in rural Idaho or rural Maine, or rural New Mexico, and I don't have the access to a lot of resources in terms of equipment or, whatever I need to run an elite level dryland program. What are some things that I can incorporate immediately that are going to help my athletes develop?
Well, you can make sufficient weights for a while with plastic, jugs, and that to get some of the stuff done. You can make sandbags. Okay. I know cars don't have inner tubes anymore, but you can still find, there's ways to do that at little cost. I suggest that you invest, you take your senior group and try if you can to have one med ball for every 2 people. If you can't, then you're going to have to go in groups and only get a 3K ball or a 6-pound ball. Don't invest in heavier or lighter. If you shop around now on the internet, you can find really good deals on them. Invest in some rings, not TRXs. Sorry, TRX, but you can get rings as cheap as I think $25 a pair now. So if you can raise about $500, I think you could do a pretty good program. Then if you can afford dumbbells, get dumbbells from 12 pounds up to 30 pounds initially, enough so that and all our work to rest ratios are 1-to-1. So if I'm using a pair of dumbbells and you're resting, like that, or you're doing med ball, and just a little bit of space, jump ropes, if you can get jump ropes, you can put together a really effective program. I mean, it doesn't take any facilities to crawl. You may have some apparatus that you can hang from or do chin-ups from or something like that. Look around your facility, and that. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers, but you don't need much. You need more imagination and creativity to look at these movements and say, okay, do I need to load them? Do I not need to load them? And that kind of stuff. So,
Vern, what is the difference between muscle flexibility and muscle pliability?
oh, geez, I knew that was coming up. Well, one of them is there's a 42-year-old quarterback that is selling pliability that they can't define it, and muscle flexibility. You don't have muscle flexibility. Okay, that's a misnomer too. You have joint flexibility, which is a range of motion around the joint. And that can be determined by, some muscle length things and things like that. So, and I'm not saying this tongue in cheek. This has come up 3 times now in the last 5 days about the pliability thing. Coaches, don't get sucked into the TBT stuff. Most of it, if you look into the science, there's no science, it's voodoo. I think there's some medicinal aids in addition to his performances, and I'm probably be sued for saying that. And flexibility or mobility is extremely important. Range of motion about the hip, obviously control of range of motion about the shoulder, range of motion at the ankle, and it's something that's inherent in our program every day. Every day it isn't stretching, it's working through full ranges of motion. Some of it is stretching. We do a lot of work with hurdles, hurdle overs, hurdle unders, crawling, just a lot of flexibility work. part of one of the warm-ups is what we call our animal series, which is jokingly, it's, in yoga, you have all the different poses that are named after animals. So it's a yoga flow series, and that. So, but I don't know. I don't know what the term pliability. Pliability is when you're playing with dough or something like that. It's not a if you look in a muscle physiology book, you're not going to learn about pliability. So
I'm glad I asked that because,
I am too.
it's such a
And I'm being,
buzzword.
it's become a buzzword, and and it's monkey see, monkey do. Look, I mean, I could go into a whole rant about longevity in sport and what he's doing, and this guy didn't help him get to where he was. Remember that? Where was he when he signed? He latched onto what you have a lot in sport, and it's happened in swimming too. When you see some older swimmers that latch onto a personal trainer, I call it they hitch their wagon to a star, and then the next thing you know, they have a video or a book, the TB2 method, and you sleep on a heavy blanket or something like that. I mean, I could make a joke about. No, I won't. This is a family
Family
thing.
program.
Yeah, family program. So you could probably know what I was thinking about. So anyway, let's change the subject. Say something I'm not supposed to say.
Vern, what are you most excited about when we think about the direction of our sport right now?
I just the thing that excites me the most about swimming, it reminds me of my first 10 years of coaching track. I think there are some really, really good young coaches, I mean, young to me now is 40 and under, that are really keen to learn, really dedicated to the sport and to the athletes, and want to be better. And so that really excites me. I think that this learning mentality, which is what I saw a lot in track and field when I started, is going to serve the sport well. And so that's really exciting. And I think the better understanding that we have now of biomechanics of swimming, the hydrodynamics, the ability to look at underwater swims instantly. I was just watching Emma the last week with Brent, and it was, for me, it was great to watch too. I think it's exciting, and there's a lot of good young kids coming up. It looks to me like, both boys and girls, so, and my part of it, the dryland part of it, I think there's an increased understanding of the role that dryland can play in terms of keeping the swimmer healthy and enhancing their performance in terms of being able to be better prepared for the water. So,
perfect segue into the last question. What are some ways that coaches can actively incorporate recovery modalities for their athletes?
Well, first, I'll quote Pete Carroll, learn the learner. I mean, get to know your athletes. Know what kids are, kind of grinders academically and are going to have to work harder in school and stay up. Make sure you know the family situations. Are the kids stopping at McDonald's on the way home because mom doesn't have time to cook? I mean, the more you can, look, I don't want to be intrusive. There's things about the athletes I don't want to know. And then I think it's our job to help, and starting with young age groupers, to start talking about a champion's lifestyle and create a culture in your team and in your club that you value coming prepared, having a dry shirt and dry clothes to put on after practice, a dry towel, instead of looking for these magic formulas, look at really basic stuff. do you have a snack that you can eat after school on the way to swim practice so you're fueled for the practice? I bet if you question most of the kids, a lot of our kids now are on it's not normal, but we will get back to in-person school and that. I think you'd be shocked if you looked at the number of kids that only maybe had a cursory breakfast before before afternoon workout. So I'm not talking about recovery right now. I'm just talking about fueling. Okay. And my next step is, I don't control that, would be start recommending for clubs that they do some fundraising and have something there for the kids to eat. Even though the socioeconomic cross section of swimmers is generally are not, it's not because they don't have the economic means of eating, it's because they're doing so many things. So that being said, I really want to teach the kids, the athletes, these yoga routines that we go through in a tempo flow. I'd like to educate them to do that as study breaks for their flexibility for recovery. I'm not a big fan of external means of recovery, i.e. ice baths, massage, that kind of stuff for the developing athlete. And most of us are working, with developing athletes before college, because I think we want to teach them how to monitor their bodies better so they know that what a niggle is versus soreness is. And I think just a good sound diet, and which incorporates some, I know we have part of the problem is we have a lot of kids and a lot of families that are trying to be vegan. And I just don't think that's compatible with an athletic, high level athlete performance. My own opinion, based on as well informed as I can be from really good people around the world. I think that's important. You don't need supplementation except potentially for iron supplementation. And if you do, you need to get somebody that can educate you as to proper iron supplementation with source of vitamin C. I do know that. What else? What else would you think of in terms of recovery? Hydration is, everybody understands that now. I think sometimes we almost overdo it a little bit. Now we're in a, it'll be, I hate to talk to the people that are listening to this, it'll be tomorrow, it's going to be 86 degrees here. And so that presents a different issue, more from what we do in dry land, and that. So, am I missing something?
No, you're right on. You're right on. And it's funny that you said that. I was walking with Coach Bowerly at Olympic trials one time, and one of the athletes said to him, Coach, I just got to go refill my water bottle. And he said, again? And he turned and he said, the most hydrated generation in history.
They are. And we're starting to find out, and I don't want to misrepresent scientific research, but we've overdone it a little bit, just like everything else. And I think you have to be really careful. Last thing and again, I don't want to get outside my lane, so to speak, but I am a generalist on some of the sports drinks too, and bars. A lot of the bars and sports drink, the sugar content is way too high. So you have to really look at the labels and get a hold of somebody. There's some good sources with U.S. Swimming, through your clubs and that and through the USOC, if you have national team members that are can give you better information. I'm passing things on secondhand, so anyway. But it's teaching your kids. Look, what percentage are going to go on and be national team members and Olympian? Minuscule, right? But teaching them a good, healthy athletic lifestyle that'll set them up to be better college students, to be better parents, to be, and that kind of stuff. And it's just creating habits. That's all we do. That's all coaches do, is create habits. So sleep, you told me we were going to talk about sleep. We get a lot of criticism in swimming because our kids are up early and supposedly from the outside, they don't get enough sleep. Maybe some do, but I think if you really look closely at your kids, I'm looking at these kids. I'm there with them a couple mornings a week at 5:30, and really good students. They're studying. I think they learn how to adjust their internal clock. If you need information as coaches, I don't know, I'm not given to hyperbole. This is a book by Pat Byrne and his daughter Suzanne Byrne. Pat Byrne is probably one of the pioneers in looking at sleep and athletic performance. He came out of occupational health, where, you know, with truck drivers and pilots and things like that in the military. And it's called Inconvenience Sleep: Why Teams Win and Lose. And it cuts to the chase. It forces you to look critically at some of the pseudoscience research and cites the studies that are spot on. And I think every swim coach ought to read this. First of all, I feel that a lot of swim coaches get unjustly, like, why, I get this all the time. First question I get from my colleagues in other sports is, why do you guys get up at 5:30 in the morning? Well, first of all, a lot of places, that's the only time you can get the pool. Secondly, you're going to have to swim fast at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning at nationals and that. Now, you maybe don't have to do it 5 days a week, but you know, there's good reasons for it. And if you look at the rhythm and flow of morning sessions versus afternoon, Carmel does this. I don't know the other clubs. We did this. We're actually adding a little swim, or Monday mornings we just swim. I mean, we just dry land to set up the week. And so that's an hour, max hour. The longest session we do is an hour. So they're back and they can eat breakfast and go to school and be normal, you know. So yeah, don't get too don't go out, and parents, coaches, don't go out and buy sleep monitors. They're bogus. They're not giving you good information. And most of the time, what I'm concerned is now is they're creating a certain level of anxiety in the young athlete, that, oh geez, I didn't get enough sleep. How can, you know, and that again, have them monitor their own bodies. And time in bed is not the same as time to sleep, but at least if you're in bed, you have a chance of getting more sleep, you know, too. So if you want to read in bed, that's fine. You know, at least you're resting. So,
Vern,
anyway.
that's great information. And I know you just finished up a podcast. Do you want to talk about your podcast?
Yeah, it was with Pat Byrne, and we went more in depth about the book. It actually was just before we got on here, and so that's why it's all in my head. And he's one of the top guys in the world and works with individual athletes. And he said, you know, he doesn't want I mean, we're talking guys that are making millions of dollars a year, and he doesn't want them wearing sleep monitors. They don't need to. He does a base period with a particular monitor that he can look at remotely. And then they basically look at routines. How do I change my routines? And a lot of people are talking about the necessity of naps. And Pat just said to me that, you know, I know when I'm an old man, when I'm up at 5:30 on that Monday, I do take a nap early afternoon for 20 minutes and stuff if I'm going to go back. I just feel like I have to. And I've always been a bit of a napper, even when I was an athlete in college. A bit of a napper. I used to sleep through classes, multiple classes. I guess that's more
You
than
heard
a
it here
napper.
first, guys. You heard it here first. Vern Gambetta
Oh.
sleeping through college courses.
I could go under a tree and sleep through the next class. That was crazy. I wish I could sleep, but no, you know, and even the necessity of naps. He said sometimes you have to be careful that you're not robbing your sleep from at night, you know, and things like that. So there's a whole business that has arisen around this. You know, if you subscribe to Tom Brady, you got to have a heavy blanket, you know, and if you can afford it, you have a supermodel with you to help with or something, you know. But no, so that was the podcast. It was cool. If you want to listen to it, it's called the Gamecast, and look for it at the GAINNetwork.com, and that's GAIN and then network. And we also have might as well plug the GAIN Swimming Master Class that Chris Webb and I do, and hopefully pandemic allowed, we will have our gain swimming event at Carmel in September. That's, we're advertising it, but
We're going to be there, Vern. Our staff's going to be there.
well, I hope we'll all be there. I'm still a little ambivalent about where this is all going. We get our second shots, I think, in 2 weeks, so that makes me a little more comfortable. But it should be cool. It's a neat event, and but on the Gamecast, you get if you go back, it's an eclectic resource of coaches, sports scientists, you name it. Virtually, I think we've had we've had Ian and Chris Webb and Chris Plum on, and I had Stefan Vidmar, great swim coach who's now in Singapore. So from the swimming side too. So that's good. So,
well, Vern, thank you so much for today. This has been an awesome hour. How can people get in touch with you if they have questions about gain or contacting you directly?
Yeah, my email is G as in go, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, S as in Sam, coach, GSTS coach at gmail.com. I'm getting better at answering email. Yeah, that's probably and then let's see, at Coach Gambetta, I think that's how you got a hold of me, at Coach Gambetta on Twitter. I have an Instagram account. I don't know how to use it, so don't. And then on LinkedIn, you could just look up my name. I don't know what it is. And then, like I said, it's thegainnetwork.com, and there's a gain swimming page underneath that if you search through the titles. So, love to hear from you. Just don't call me after 6 o'clock Eastern time, and I won't answer. So otherwise, I'll eventually get back to you. I like talking to people. Sometimes I'll ask to Zoom too, just because, you get a better sense of how people are reacting to what you say and things like that too. Because some of the stuff that we do, some people might think it's really off the wall. I mean, they'll come and look at us and they say, well, that's really bad technique. No, that fits her. That's how she does her squats. And come and watch sometimes. I marvel at these kids. I am just in awe of the kids that I see at the other teams, but I'm just so thrilled to be working with at day to day now with the Sharks and working closely with the coaches. And it's really neat to see how these kids have progressed, so it's much different when you're there day to day. So it's cool.
Well, Vern, the success is evident. You can see it when you watch the athletes perform. I know it's something that they enjoy, and I know it's something that their coaches are big believers in. So we appreciate your contributions to our sport, and we hope that those people that are going to sign up for the Gain Clinic will be able to do it in person this fall in September. And I look forward to connecting with you more in the future, too. Thanks so much, Coach.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
You too. And everybody can catch this episode on the Fitter and Faster website, as well as on the Fitter and Faster YouTube channel. And be on the lookout for those athletes who are working with Vern in the future. And I think you'll see some good things. All right. We'll see you guys next week.